Hey everyone, back in my kitchen. Shitty lighting and all, whatever. Um, Today, I'm going to talk about another aspect of this, which is very interesting, considering I am a former clinical researcher. Mostly worked in ophthalmology. I worked briefly in pediatric vaccine research, and then some miscellaneous studies that were just handed to me that were very interesting. But I'd like to talk about research in general, but how I was the subject of an illegal human experiment. Which, like I said, I just started feeling, if you want to call it, we'll just air quote everything. I just started feeling safe about a week ago. Whether or not that's a false sense of security or not, I never know. So I just keep my guard up at all times, because the second I relax is the second some idiot puts something in my drink that kills me. So we're not going to do that. But anyone who works in any type of research with human clinical trials knows that first and foremost, you get informed consent. And that means if you're dealing with minors, you sit down with the children and their parents at the same time. You make sure everybody understands. It doesn't matter if the child is 5 years old or 15 years old. Everyone's present in the room while the informed consent is going on. If there's a language barrier, you get a translator. If you do not have a translator for the language that is that your subject speaks, and there's a language barrier, that could be a hindrance of consent. So these are all really important things. If you have someone who has a learning disability, is unable to read, the protocol is to read the consent to them and make sure that they're understanding as you're going along. They are to initial each page of the informed consent, showing that they are aware of what they're participating in, what all is involved. I mean, it really breaks down into all their visits, how much time they're going to spend, what drugs being used, whether or not there's a placebo in the trial, or, depends on what phase of the trial you're in. Sometimes you're doing clinical trials with approved drugs. Sometimes most of my clinical trials were drugs that were not on the market yet. They were not approved. They were either completely experimental at that time, or they were being used for off-label experimentation, which off-label means you have a drug that treats one thing like diabetes, but you find out that it works for, I don't know, there was a drug that we were using, a drug to treat, this is an interesting side story. There's an Eli Lilly drug that we were using to treat, was it diabetic retinopathy? It was a diabetic condition, ophthalmological condition. I think it was diabetic retinopathy. And there was a sexual functioning questionnaire, because this drug actually doubled as essentially performing the functions of what Viagra would do. And to my knowledge, that led to the approval of Cialis. Now, I could be wrong about these things. It's been like 20 years since that was my firsthand experience, but that's what off-label is. It's when a drug is made to treat one condition, but they find out it treats other things as well, and then they're using it for off-label because it's been approved for one thing, but it hasn't been approved for the other. So then you're doing clinical trials to try to, get the FDA approval for these other conditions. So a lot of drugs happen like that during trials, where you're experimenting and you find that it treats other things, or you do these questionnaires, these quality of life functioning questionnaires with patients at periodic intervals during their trial, and you find out how is it affecting their quality of life. Is the drug affecting their quality of life? Is their disease affecting their mental, their physical? It's that kind of thing. So my point is, any and all research is null and void if the informed consent process is not done right. And researchers can be punished for that. They can be punished for, signing off on lab tests, or having their staff sign off on lab tests without actually looking at the results. Or again, if you're the investigator, especially the principal investigator, that is the doctor in charge, and the other investigators would be under that person. It is the principal investigator's responsibility to make sure that things are being done correctly. So if you've got staff that's doing weird shit and you've got other doctors that are, altering the study for financial gain or whatever it might be, because there are stipends, there are grants involved in research. A lot of times clinics will get these grants and then the research is just passed down to the staff and there's very little oversight. That's not how things should be done, but it happens. So, and it tends to happen in clinics where they're running a lot of studies, they're making a lot of money, and the patient care just goes down, down, down because they don't have the capacity to spend enough time with the patient. So part of that is why I left research, really just being overworked, underpaid, but that's life. Overworked, underpaid, that's most people's reality. It was watching the standard of care go down for patients while clinics make money off of them. That was hard, and I'm not built for that. And my patients knew it, and my patients really liked me a lot. I felt bad when I left some of those clinics. To circle around to when I started this, first of all, some old ass motherfucker at the NIH, I read some of your case studies and I'm not impressed, but whatever. I keep hearing someone in the back of my head. Like I said, I have psychic abilities. I'm not delusional, I'm not demented, because a lot of these things happen and it's confirmation, and I'm not nuts. I find it interesting that whoever was running the experiment just keeps saying, like, the subject is not complying, the subject is misbehaving. The subject is misbehaving is what I keep hearing directly. And yeah, it's because I was never properly consented, nor did I agree to be in any type of human experiment. So, suck my balls. Yeah, I'm misbehaving. Where's my money? So anyways, I just, I find it interesting. And then, to get on board with a lot of what social media is talking about, this thing recently with the Tuskegee Airmen really just crosses civil rights, human rights. And like I said, I've never watched The Handmaid's Tale, but I have an idea of the premise, and I just feel like somebody's trying to make this a reality. Like, if we just remove all the laws, then we can do whatever we want. Well, no. And as long as I have to be here in the United States, I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen, because this is getting really out of fucking control. I mean, it is just out of control. I find it also interesting that, and I'm going to say it how it is, because, I don't like to pick apart people's physical appearances unless they're coming after you in a way that's inhumane. But I find it amusing how many old, fat, physically inactive and unhealthy motherfuckers are on some kind of crusade to force people on Snap and just in general Americans to be healthy. Like, you can't force someone to be healthy, first of all, but I find it amusing that the people that want to force people to be healthy are the most unhealthy looking people that I've seen in a while. So that's amusing to me. But anyways, I just have really strong feelings about research, how it should be conducted, the money that's involved. A while ago, they did make it so that pharmaceutical reps, like, this is aside from research, this is just like medical across the board. They made it so that pharmaceutical reps couldn't come in and schmooze and, take the doctors to Morton's and convince them that they need this research in their clinic, because it was essentially buying, it was just looked at as bad practice. It's essentially buying your participation, through incentives. And, they'll still come by. I mean, like, people selling medical devices will still come by. They'll bring the office Panera, whatever they're allowed to do. But they used to be able to have a credit card and just go all out expense account. And that is not something that people are supposed to be doing, although it is something that still happens. So It's interesting. I did have a research job, my last research job. I won't say it was my final one, but if any of them were indicative of any of the behavior going on at this clinic, it is my final one. If I find a clinic that doesn't suck, I would love to go back to research. That is far and few between. But what I found interesting was that this person, I've never met a physician so scatterbrained in my life. For someone who's so smart and so focused in some areas of their life, this person, literally, it was just like, what do I keep likening that to when they keep saying like, like Lebowski, when they're like, new shit has come to light, man. It's like every time this person had a new fleeting thought, they had to rewrite their protocol, which was fine if the protocol wasn't supposed to be written before I got there. I mean, I'm literally getting there into a study where this person's still writing the protocol. And then the pre-existing studies that this person had, I mean, I should have started with the visit windows. I should have started scheduling. I should have asked more questions. But they basically gave me the role of a clinical research assistant and a medical assistant at the same time. And like, I'm not a medical assistant. I'm not a scribe. I am not a certified medical technician. That is not what I do. I coordinate research. And I found it very unhelpful that I kept trying to separate the clinic between the research part, and it was all just thrown at me. And I did my best to sink or swim, but this was during COVID where we were doing telehealth and you had to keep getting state licensure to be able to do telehealth, to be able to do remote visits, to conduct research basically over Zoom. And so we had to keep getting, certificates just for our regular patients. And it was just a shit show. And to my knowledge, I feel like it was a shit show on purpose. I got there, I did my best with what I was given, but I was made to look like I wasn't doing good enough, or that what I was doing was wrong. And I find it really funny, the hypocrisy of a physician that I worked with was literally, I kept getting these phone calls. I'm triaging people, right? And I'm getting these phone calls like, Dr. So-and-so is not returning my calls. They've been dodging me for 2 years from another state and all this stuff. And when I asked the doctor, she's like, yeah, that's right. And I was just shocked. She's like, yeah, I left a clinic and I haven't returned any of these. Like, all these patients were lost to follow-up and she could have cared less. And I had to deal with her angry patients and basically just find excuses or ways of stalling and putting them off. And that place was so nuts, I ended up just leaving because I'd never been worked to the point where I'm triaging emails and phone calls when I first wake up, trying to feed my dog and just get ready to leave the house, right? I'm in my car, I'm getting phone calls from the clinic on the way to and from work. I'm at work for 10 hours a day, 8 to 10, depending. It ended up being more like 8 because I ended up doing so much work from home that I was just like, it's just easier for me to triage when I'm at home and I'm not getting bombarded by like other office interruptions and whatever. But it sucked because that was a really great job. I just had another terrible boss. Story of my life is every boss I've ever had, with the exception of like 2, were terrible. And they were terrible on purpose. And I just want all this stuff exposed. Everything that's been done to me in my lifetime to make me look like I'm a bad employee really bothers me. I'm a very hard worker, but I will not tolerate somebody abusing me at work, and I will not tolerate somebody who just wants to make my life miserable. That is not the woman at the last clinic that I was talking about. And whether or not she wanted to or not is speculative. I don't feel that way, but I have had bosses who I could just tell were there to make my life miserable. And there'd be other employees who were just like the poster children for for bad employees, the poster child for, bad behavior at work. And I find it interesting how those people are promoted and then I'm supposed to just like look the other way and be like, yeah, okay. So I have left a lot of jobs, and then I started working for myself. And the whole point of working for myself is to avoid an abusive, terrible boss situation. My last job I thought was going to be different. It wasn't. The only difference was my bad boss was better at covering up the fact that they were a bad boss. They were just hiding it and doing shit behind the scenes. And then, of course, when I left those jobs, it continued into my personal life because they weren't able to fuck with me at work. So anyways, this is supposed to be about research. I wasn't going to talk this long. I just want people to see more of who I really am. Sometimes just for shits and giggles, like I said, I find it amusing to have a drink on camera, get a little ratchet on camera. Everyone's got multifaceted parts of their personality. So, you know, if you want to look at a 10-minute video on YouTube and be like, that's who I am, that's fine. Like I said, I am a very private person. So only people that know me in real life and know me well, there are less than 5. There are less than 5 people who know me in this lifetime, who know me well, and I guarantee they're not speaking out in my defense. Just a bunch of haters talking mad shit, and that's fine. But anyways, my point is that I am here to help people. I am here to defend humanity. I'm here to defend human rights. I'm not here to stifle anyone, and I'm not here to hurt people. That said, a lot of my previous videos have not been very nice, but you have to understand what I'm dealing with. I've literally been dealing with hundreds of people trying to kill me. And I don't feel any kind of way about those kind of people. If they live, die, disappear, you know, fall off the face of the earth, it doesn't matter to me. It's actually beneficial. So saying that out loud is something I don't have a problem with. It's just been twisted around. You know, everything I say and do is twisted around, is what it is. So, in the meantime, yeah, I just want people to know that I'm closely watching what's happening as much as I can in the world, and I'm just here to stop all the injustice. So, anyone else getting on board, that's great. You know, uprising is real. You know, I don't mean to be like, oh, let's all be rebellious, but, you know, do what's good for you. If something is stifling you and standing on your human rights, stand up for yourself. Don't sit there and let somebody keep you quiet. Don't let someone threaten you into behaving a certain way or coerce you into behaving a certain way. Stand up for yourself. If you think you're in a dangerous situation, I guess be careful about how you do it. I am not the kind of person to give any advice about that. I've probably been in danger for the last 2 years straight, and I just got used to it. So that's also the reason why I really try not to associate with people. It's not personal. I don't want other people getting hurt. So yeah, anyways, that's my 2 cents for the day. Research is interesting though. If anyone wants to ask me any questions, I've had some really interesting studies and some really interesting findings along the way. And I can only talk about, you know, what doesn't violate HIPAA law. I can't talk about specific patients and things like that, but I can tell you details about some of the research we were doing, and it's very interesting. I can only hope, since I left ophthalmology, which was quite some time ago, gosh, probably like 2007, I went into other fields of research, and then I just started doing my art full time. But I really hope that there are better ways of, treating people with macular degeneration. Anyways, talk to you later. Bye.